We just did a study right before our summit last week, and it was a survey of thousands of people. We were asking them about if they wanted to work at a movie theater or not, and lots of different questions. And those who were interested in working in a movie theater, it was because they love going to the movies. They want the free movie tickets, and they want to be in a movie theater. The reason that they don't want to work in a movie theater is because they don't think that there's a growth opportunity. If you start in this business and you care about it, you have a trajectory, and we have not told that story.
Hello and welcome to the Boxoffice Podcast. I'm Rebecca Pahle, Deputy Editor at Boxoffice Pro, the only publication exclusively dedicated to the global cinema market. Joined today by Jesse Rifkin, our Boxoffice Pro analyst. How you doing, Jesse?
Hey, I'm doing great and glad we could be taping this podcast on a Monday, the day before I fly down to Austin, Texas to compete in the National Pun Contest.
Well, you know, I hope you represent box office well. If you don't, you're fired. Well, we have a lot to talk about in terms of box office here, both in terms of what went down this past weekend and potential holdovers and new releases for the upcoming weekend. Before we get to our feature segment, that would be excerpts from a panel moderated by myself at last week's Geneva Convention called New Approaches to Hiring, How to Expand Your Labor Pool. Basically kind of digging into the new realities of hiring and retention, especially with regards to the younger generations coming into the workforce. We'll be hearing there from Jackie Brenneman, EVP and General Counsel of NATO and President of the Cinema Foundation, Stacy Babl, Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Marcus Theaters, and author and keynote speaker at the Geneva Convention, Valerie Alexander.
Hey, you know what's a really good way to improve retention in the industry? If you don't tell people, hey, unless you do well at the pun contest, you're fired.
Well, then you better do well at the pun contest, Jesse. That's all I have to say. Now, box office. Jesse, I'm going to kind of just go through the numbers here and then get your take on some things. Coming in at first place, we have Paramount continuing their hot streak with Smile opening to $22 million. 23% of their earnings came from premium large formats. It's hard to compare that to other mid-budget horror films because we don't tend to really get PLF stats for most of those. But it seems, almost a quarter, Jesse. That seems to me like a pretty big chunk for something that's not like a huge spectacle action superhero movie type thing. So PLF keeps drawing them back in.
Paramount's original weekend projection on Saturday was $19 million, but as the performance ended up being better than they thought, by Sunday they had revised it up to $22 million. Did you hear about the viral marketing stunt that Paramount did at Major League Baseball games?
I heard about it from my boyfriend, who texted me a picture of his screen with, what the hell is this? This person's is just frozen like this for 30 minutes. So smart. For those who don't know, Jesse, what was the situation here? Because this was some marketing brilliance.
At several nationally broadcast Major League Baseball games this past week, Paramount put people behind home plate where the camera is the whole time as it's on the batter, with their facial expressions permanently frozen in this weird, creepy smile, just like the characters are in the film and in the posters for the film, as promotional for the movie Smile, and it got a lot of attention.
They had Smile on the t-shirt, so you knew what it was. That has to be that's a good bang for your buck marketing campaign. You need tickets to behind home plate. You need to hire actors who are good with holding creepy smiles for a good amount of time. Kudos to the marketing team at Paramount on that one, because that's one of the best marketing ideas I've seen in the last while, for sure.
Think about it from a cost perspective. To buy spots for a nationally broadcast baseball game would be who knows how many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. To buy a seat behind home plate, that's only in the hundreds of dollars. And you get way more people talking about it that way. Not
so good on the marketing, maybe. Not so good with the box office. We had fellow new release Bros from Universal. It opened It was fourth place.
Yes, fourth place behind Smile, a holdover of Don't Worry, Darling, and a holdover of The Woman King. For comparison, most box office projections had it opening in second place. Instead, it came in fourth.
So, Jesse, I'm going to ask you, and we're going to kind of go over why we think this movie underperformed. We know why star Billy Eichner thinks it underperformed because he tweeted some arguments to the effect that homophobia was somewhat responsible for people not showing up to the film, that straight people didn't go to the film. He also made the assertion that a chain asked to not show the trailer because of the same-sex content, and Universal basically put the kibosh on that ask. Though we don't know it's true, but we do know Billy Eichner here is implying that if you didn't see Bros, you were a, quote, homophobic weirdo, and that even, I quote, even with glowing reviews, great Rotten Tomatoes scores, an A cinema score, etc., straight people, especially in certain parts of the country, just didn't show up for Bros, and that's disappointing, but it is what it is. So, Jesse, neither of us really think this holds a ton of water as an argument. What's your thoughts here?
Well, we have some data that seems to disprove this. If you're talking about a major mainstream comedy starring gay characters, we can go back to Bruno, which had not one but 2 weekends, both its opening weekend and its sophomore weekend, which earned more than the 4.8 million that Bros opened with. Also, Brokeback Mountain had not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 weekends during its run, which earned more than the 4.8 million that Bros just did in its opening weekend.
I'm just looking at this film. Neither of the two leads are big stars. And when's the last time we had a rom-com that did like really well when the person wasn't already an A-list star? I mean, was it Crazy Rich Asians? Because that had a ton of people in it. I mean, that was an ensemble, so. Some
people think Crazy Rich Asians isn't even a romantic comedy because the two lead characters are together at the start of the movie. It's more like a Meet the Parents kind of style film about meeting your boyfriend's family more than the two main characters actually falling in love.
Rom-com adjacent, but either way, the star power did not appear to be here. Looking at the demographic breakdown too for Bros opening weekend, it was 61% Caucasian audiences, 19% Hispanic, 6% African American, and 7% Asian. Compare that to Smile, admittedly a vastly different film in pretty much every way. But it's 40% Caucasian, 32% Hispanic, 16% Black. Like, clearly, Smile was able to draw in multicultural audiences in a way that Bros just was not. The audience of Bros on the opening weekend, more than half of them were white, and just about half of them were 35 and older. So didn't connect with the youngs.
Yeah, and in Smile, only 19% of its audience was 35 and older.
We have Bros, which opened poorly, Smile, which opened well. What do you think we're looking at in terms of second week holdovers for most of those? Because with Smile, I mean, we have Barbarian as kind of a recent comp in terms of first-time director, mid-level horror film. Started well. What do you think we're going to be looking at?
Well, it's now going to be October, which is, you might know, is the month that people like to see horror films for obvious reasons. So I think the hold is going to be pretty good. Barbarian, which came out, I believe, last month, had a second weekend decline of only 38% down, which is pretty good. And you might see Smile do about that level, perhaps even a little less with Halloween right around the corner.
Next weekend, we actually have not one, not two, but 3 wide releases. First, we have Amsterdam from David O. Russell out from 20th Century Studios, who actually moved it forward around a month so that we'll be seeing it this weekend. You know, it's a really all-star cast. We have Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington. Obviously, Russell has, historically been award season mainstay. So hopefully this film falls in that range as well. We also have from Focus Features Tar, which it seems very kind of, niche, not mainstream. It's Cate Blanchett being very intense as a classical music conductor, as far as I can tell. And I'm there for Cate Blanchett being intense at things. So, but the most interesting one here, we have Lyle Crocodile from Sony. Jesse, this is the first wide release kids movie since July.
Yeah, and it's going to be the only wide release kids movie until Disney's Strange World comes out on Thanksgiving weekend in late November. So it basically has the corridor to itself. I don't think a lot of kids will be going to see horror films like Smile or Halloween Ends. So this is going to be basically cornering the market for almost 2 months.
What do you think in terms of expectations for that opening weekend? I mean, it's a unique circumstance in a way to have that much time just to yourself and that much pent-up demand.
Opening weekend, probably somewhere around the 20 million range, give or take. The hold will depend on, how much people like the movie, but opening probably somewhere around 20 million. Amsterdam, which comes out the same weekend, maybe a little bit less than that. We're looking at somewhere around the 10 to 15 million range opening there.
But potentially some good legs for those as they struggle to compete against horror films. I don't know. I love horror films all year round, so I'm just excited. This is my favorite time of year. Thank you, Jesse, as always, for providing the box office insights and from myself and everyone at the box office team. And I'm going to say also from our listeners and from the entire cinema industry, I'm going to speak for them. Good luck at your pun competition.
Wow, the entire cinema industry is rooting for me?
Yeah.
That's incredible. I don't know if I'm going to win, though. I mean, I once submitted some puns to a pun contest, and hoping that one of them would win, but no pun intended.
Thank you, Jesse. And with those puns out of our system, let's go to our feature segment recorded live at last week's Geneva Convention. Again, this is a panel on how the realities of hiring and retention have really changed over these past few years. And we were able to dig into some best practices on moving forward. Our speakers, again, we have Jackie Brenneman from NATO and the Cinema Foundation, keynote speaker and author Valerie Alexander, and starting the conversation, Stacy Babl, Senior VP of HR at Marcus Theaters, who starts off our feature segment discussing whether she believes recent staffing difficulties will be going away anytime soon.
I would say it's not going to go away. So until we can, from an HR perspective, get our hiring processes tighter or quicker and embrace some technologies that other industries have, such as text to apply, I don't know that we're going to completely dissolve it. And quite honestly, even with those technologies, you're not going to completely dissolve it, but they do make things better. They make it quicker, right? Like you can get people faster.
Valerie, I wanted to ask you, one of the most interesting parts for me is that how often employers just really have no idea what it is that their employees want. So could you explain a bit about, would you go speak a little bit about that? Or?
Sure, because here's the most interesting thing. Your employees want to tell you what they want. They want to love their jobs. They really do. And we have to train ourselves to listen to what people tell us. And actually, going directly to your point about this generation of employees, it started with millennials, but by the way, millennials now are 26 to 42. They're not kids. And Gen Z is the 15 to 25-year-olds that are coming into the workforce now. They were raised differently than a lot of us were. I don't know, how many people can finish this sentence from your parents? It's my way. Yeah, guess what? My niece and nephew were not raised with that phrase at all. They were listened to in their household. And that generation fully comes into your workplace expecting to be listened to. And that's a lot of what they're rebelling against. That's a lot of what they're leaving. And also, when I was growing up, if you got out of the house and then moved back into the house afterwards, you were a big loser. No one under the age of 40 feels that that's a problem. So they will walk from a job they're not enjoying. And if that means they move back in with mom and dad, mom's thrilled. And so these are the things we have to contemplate. What do people want out of their workplaces?
Yeah, well, and the Marcus people out there already know this, but that gets at kind of one of the things that we've been focused on this year is really personalizing employment, and what does that mean to be more personalized in the workplace, and the fact that people want to be valued for themselves and for being an individual, and it's not necessarily I'm serving the company, it's how is the company serving me.
And Jackie, I know you have like a macro view of the entire industry, and I know you have a very personal passion in terms of treating people well, which ultimately is kind of what it comes down to. What are the trends that you're seeing kind of in the hiring, retention? Like, what's the overall picture been since COVID?
When we're talking about, employees wanting to feel heard, something really interesting that I've seen, and one of our members in Australia has implemented this, which I find very fascinating, is this kind of a Facebook forum where employees can actually make suggestions, things get brought to them. And I wonder, we had, I don't know how many of you here were taken by surprise with the whole Gentle Minions thing. Like it just totally shocked you. You were not really prepared for the chaos.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? So all this big TikTok trend. And I remember I was on a thread with some security officers from big chains, and one of them said, I wish there was a way we could have known about this. And that they have social media teams. With their social media teams, the job is to work on making sure guests are happy. And what I think, and I wonder, is so many of the employees probably knew about this trend, and they probably had ideas. They probably thought, oh, we could do something really cool to promote our business, but they didn't know. First of all, they probably assumed that their bosses already knew, so they didn't even know if their ideas were valuable. And then they didn't have a forum to do that and know that would turn into something. And those are these kind of like little opportunities that, I really think we have a chance to fix that. We just did a study right before our summit last week, and it was a survey of, thousands of people. We were asking them about if they wanted to work at a movie theater or not, and just lots of different questions. And those who were interested in working in a movie theater, it was because they love going to the movies. There is something, they want the free movie tickets, and they want to be in a movie theater. And the reason that they don't want to work in a movie theater is because they don't think that there's a growth opportunity. And so we have, again, so many people in here, so many executives in this industry started off popping popcorn. There's actually an incredible amount of growth in this. If you start in this business and you care about it, you have a trajectory, and we have not told that story. And so again, just creating a forum where people can be heard and know that there's a path up. If you have good ideas, there's a place for you in this business, I think is something really exciting. And obviously at NATO, I'm not working on, mass hiring, but instead it's about industry representation. So certainly within NATO, which is a small team, something that I've worked really hard on is bringing more objectivity into both the hiring process and in the evaluation process, really focusing on objective metrics, because especially as a woman, your personality ends up being the primary part of your reviews otherwise. And men, that's just not what happens. You have to do, adding in that objectivity really helps with unconscious bias, which we all suffer from. When I'm thinking about the industry, it's also important, it's very difficult to diversify. It's not just let's just grab random ladies or random people that aren't just, white men and put them in the rooms and tell everyone that they have this title now. Because people really feel like, especially in this business, that they earned their volunteer leadership, they earned whatever it is that they've spent 20, 30 years building a reputation and building that, and it feels like a threat if someone is just kind of being thrown in there, and it devalues all of that. And so what we've been trying to do at NATO through like very conscious DE&I work is to really elevate people that already are leaders in the business, that just, they weren't at NATO events before because they didn't think it was for them. They didn't really think that there was a place for them. And really giving them opportunities to shine and show that they are, they've got 30 years of experience and all of that, and then become leaders elected by their peers for other things. But we have to really push, and we have to make some people uncomfortable. But as a trade body that represents not just exhibitors in the United States, but across the globe, it's also our responsibility to put in that effort and to ruffle some feathers, because we cannot do a good job if we only have a few perspectives. The more perspectives we have, the better.
A formal, informal mentorship program is so key. If you look at a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion research out there, that is the difference between who gets to an executive level and who doesn't, right? It's if somebody's in that higher level position, it's that proclivity for sameness. You look like me, you have the same type of skills I had at that age. Come here, let me show you. Let me take you to this NATO event, right? They're being brought in. So naturally, if I don't see myself above, then I'm not seeking out someone who's going to pull me along the way. So I think opportunities like that are crucial, especially for diversity.
There's a much bigger issue around mentorship. There's mentorship and sponsorship.
Right.
Those are two different things that are really, really important. Sponsorship means you speak for someone when they're not in the room. If someone you think has potential, you keep their name on your tongue and you speak it. so that they're being considered for the good assignments, or they're being stopped from getting that low-level scut work that only gets assigned to the people who look like them. But with mentorship, and this is really important, and it happens without anybody realizing it's happening, the nature of our mentorship is different based on our identities. So what happens is women are most often mentored on how to behave with more confidence. A senior person mentors a woman on how to have more confidence, which is important. In the workplace, confidence and competence are perceived as the same thing. But seriously, no, people who are highly competent, which almost all women, once they've reached the level, are highly competent. But if they behave with no confidence, they're perceived as incompetent. And then the people who are highly confident, they can go years before anybody figures out the truth.
Yeah.
But the women are mentored in having more confidence. Often, people of color, people from a non-majority community, will be mentored on how to fit into the corporate culture. And if your corporate culture needs people to fit into it, the culture is the problem, not the people who aren't fitting in. But while that mentorship is happening, while the women are being mentored on their confidence and their soft skills, and other people are mentored on how to look like everyone, act like everyone else, the white men are being mentored on the business skills and the financial strategy they need to get ahead in their careers. So when it comes time to advance somebody, senior leadership looks who has the skill set we need. And the person who provides the most valuable skills to the company is the one who gets ahead. So if you are mentoring somebody, make sure they are being mentored on the strategy and the business and the finance and the business acumen that they need to advance in their careers, not only to create a more equitable workplace, but also to create more value for your company. Then you have more people with that skill.
I want to add to that because I think I've heard a lot of men, especially recently, express fear about mentoring women. And I beg of every man in this room to not be afraid to mentor women, right? Like, it is like, we need you, especially if you are the number one in the vertical that you think there's a strong female candidate. You have to be the mentor and the sponsor. You do. You have to be able to say that woman is just as qualified, that she's got these talents, that she's the right next leader. You have to be able to do that. And the only way you can do that is if you actually invest in her career. You can't just sit on the sides. There are lots of times where, as a woman, I'm put on a panel that's just about being a woman or for women, and then men don't go to those. This is obviously not that. This just happens to be all women on a panel about HR. But when it's those types of panels, men feel like that's not for them. This is gossip in the room, and that doesn't help any of us. It's not. I don't really understand the purpose of what I'm going to be adding to the room, and that's the wrong audience. So I really do think it's so critical to be in those rooms to help lift up people that you think are talented, and don't be afraid of doing so.
Well, and I'll say this, what we try to do from our HR department is give our operators very tactical tools, right? Because they're operators, and that's the way their brains work, right? So in terms of mentorship, we are in the process, we actually have outlined a formal mentorship program at the salaried level for our general managers, and are assigning specifically new managers to our certified mentors. And that requires them to go through the competencies, which are business-based. They're not necessarily just, oh, you're a woman, you need this, or you're a man, you need this, or you're this. The other thing that this accomplishes as we expand this program out, which the intention is for our talent development team to expand it down to the person standing behind the concessions counter, is recruitment and retention, especially from a diversity standpoint. We have a great amount of diversity at the hourly level, but the problem becomes that there's a wall that gets hit, right? And there's a number of reasons, right? There's cultural reasons from their perspective in terms of confidence or wanting to raise their hand, or it's not culturally appropriate for them to push themselves forward and say, hey, this is what I'm good at. They wait to be called upon. But there's other reasons in terms of how we have our structures set up at the company as well, and how we identify people. So putting that formal mentorship in place is going to be so important for us to advance that diversity in our company, and it's also going to advance retention because now these are people who truly can see those career pathways, and they see it happening through mentorship and through the visualization of the pathway itself.
But it'll also get you much greater outcomes as a company. That's the value of diversity, is not having people in the room with different body parts or different skin color or different religion. The value is different perspectives.
Yeah.
You get more value when you hear from more people. And that's why we also have to work really hard to make sure we are hearing from the people. Having a diverse workforce, having different people in the room does nothing if their voices aren't being heard. So we have to amplify voices as well.
And ask for the feedback, right? And ask for it too. It's what I say: get comfortable being uncomfortable with constructive conflict. As a manager, oftentimes, even for me, you're pushing along and you just want the work to get done. You don't want somebody to question you. You don't want somebody to bring a different opinion to the table. But that's truly where the innovation happens. You can't have a team of defensive ends. You have to be able to fill the gaps. That was not meant to be a football joke for those of you out there who never mind.
Luckily, I would never understood football.
They filled the gaps. Never mind. Anyway, so you can't have a team of just one position, and rightfully so, because everybody has a different perspective, and it leads to a successful winning outcome in the game.
I mean, there's a lot of, in any industry, but I think, Jackie, disagree with me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of we have a lot of family-owned companies, a lot of people who have been doing this since they were, like you said, popping popcorn. There's a lot of this is the way it's always been done, so let's just keep doing it. How do you change that if you recognize it in yourself, or how do you communicate to other people?
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about this because I feel one of my favorite things about this industry, and one of the things I've been luckiest to benefit from, is the rich storytelling. There's so much history in this business and so many people whose names come up in conversations, people who are long dead that I feel I know. And those stories matter. You've all heard them for generations too. And so if you don't respect that history, and if you don't respect those stories, then what you're going to be doing, if you're making change for change's sake, and you don't understand the history, you don't understand what in 1975 when this was attempted before and what happened, and you just bulldoze in, you first of all are probably going to repeat history, but also are going to be offending people, and that's not the way you get change done, right? So I think movie theater owners and people in this industry have long shown that they are innovative, right? I mean, movie theaters now don't look anything like movie theaters from my childhood, right? There's huge innovation across the globe in movie theaters. So there's not a fear of innovation, but it's about understanding the right language, and it's about remembering that the people that work here know their communities better than anyone. And so it's really about taking time to listen, and to if you have an idea for something that you want done on a big scale, maybe be really comfortable starting smaller. The recliners started in just some territories, and now everyone's got recliners, because there was a proven ROI. It made sense to invest in it because you're losing seats. You lose bodies. It doesn't add up on paper, and you're not ridiculous to have thought that wasn't going to work. So I do think, this whole business has been done a certain way for 100 years. The way studios and exhibitors deal with each other is based on the fact that studios used to own exhibitors. And we had consent decrees for almost 100 years that governed how we behaved. And so to step into this business and act like that none of that matters is arrogant and disrespectful. But to also come in and think that just because this industry is a legacy industry that it's incapable of change is also missing the forest for the trees.
In terms of career development, obviously you have companies like Marcus that are huge companies, and there is that pathway to, if I want to make this a career, there's opportunity for that to happen. For a lot of other cinemas or small chains, that's not the case. You work for, an independent cinema and you really love it, but you're never going to own that cinema. If it is just a summer job, or if it is a job that they're interested in, they want to have for a few years, how do you motivate people in that circumstance where it's not about like, oh, one day you could be the CEO of this chain?
Well, first it starts by knowing what they want, right, and having that conversation, that personal conversation about it. And second, I'm a big fan of a term that's called growth in place, right? We are always learning and growing, and when you're learning and growing, your mind is activated. If my ultimate goal, I could be a high schooler, my ultimate goal is to go to school for HR, that is not what happened, this is accidental. But if that is my ultimate goal and my boss knows that, they might start pulling me in and say, hey, why don't you help me out with employee scheduling? And you can start to see that. So even as a small group, you can do those little things in terms of job shadowing. There's also some great free tools out there. If you go to mindtools.com, Google regarding work, they have a lot of great free opportunities for education. So if you have somebody who's interested in something, you can still provide them educational opportunities. But as long as they're learning and growing, that is going to keep them around. It's going to keep them engaged. Obviously, one day they are going to go off to school, but what a great recruitment tool, because now they'll be like, I had this awesome experience, they helped me learn and grow, they got me ready for my next step.
I mean, that's the best recruitment tool, right, is word of mouth.
100%. Every industry I've worked in my entire career, it's always word of mouth.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Box Office Podcast. Thanks as well to Jesse Rifkin, Jackie Brenneman, Stacy Babl, Valerie Alexander, and the entire team at the Geneva Convention. The Box Office Podcast is co-produced by the Box Office Company and Record Edit Podcast. Please tune in next Thursday for our next episode. Rate and subscribe if you like what you hear. Thank you. Have a good one.